Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, I'm very happy to welcome you to today's webinar, where we'll be addressing the crucial question of where are we with the implementation of the EU waste laws. Very quickly, and before we kick off today's event, as there is, hashtag no time to waste, which is also the hashtag for following the discussion on Twitter, no time to waste, I would like to take the opportunity to thank MEP Mr. Franc Bogovič for taking the lead with regards to hosting today's event, as well as colleagues from EEB, the European Environmental Bureau, for kindly organizing today's webinar. Prior to passing the floor to Mr. Bogovič for his opening remarks of the event, I would like to let you know that today's discussion will be moderated by Mr. Piotr Barczak, Senior Policy Officer for Waste at EEB. On a final note, I would also like to invite our audience to send us your questions during the event. For that, feel free to use the Q&As box, which should appear at the right top of your screen, choosing the All Panelists option. So you can use the Q&As box, choosing the All Panelists option. Within your question, please make sure to also note the speaker to whom your question is best addressed, so that we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. Mr. Bogovič, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilias, for the floor, and good afternoon to everybody, to all panelists. Thank you that you will create today's event. Thanks to many participants who are registered and participated this event. I think it's a very interesting event which is in line with action which are going on in the European Union. We all know that last year the COVID crisis changed our life a lot, but one thing is for sure, that the Green Deal and Circular Action Plan are things which will create many of European policies. One of these very important policies is also policy about waste. In July 2020, marked an important milestone. It was a deadline set by European Commission to European member states to transpose in national law a package of waste-related legislation, which were revised in 2018, including a directive on wastes and landfill of waste and packaging. And today we will see the situation where we are today, and also we will speak about this, what to do in the next year that we will reach the goals which are more and more ambitious. In European Parliament, whole time we support these ambitious targets, and I can also say on the base of experiences, I was 13-year mayor in Slovenia in the years between 1998 and 2011, that it is possible to change a lot on waste management. In case of my municipality, in this time, we really made such a big steps that today we are far away in positive way from these European goals. We reached this before the target was made, and it's very important that we work on the whole level. On one side, that European Commission prepare legislation that together we prepare this preparation, accept it in the Parliament, in the Council. But I think that the most important part is when it's necessary that we come to on national level, and especially on regional and local level. And involvement of whole society is very important. We saw those big changes in the society, and more people are very responsible to the nature, and part of this responsibility is also waste management. So today we said that our hashtag is no time to waste, so I will not waste the time, and I will ask Piotr that he continue, and thanks to organizing this event, and thanks for moderating this event. Piotr, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bogovič, and thank you for hosting the event. Thank you to EBCD for organizing. Yes, I represent the EEB, and I will have a short presentation just a little bit later. But first, let's move on directly to the European Commission. We have Mr. Mattia Pellegrini, who is the head of the unit of waste management. So directly the unit responsible for tracking the implementation at national level. So if with no further ado, I will speak later. I will have lots of opportunities to speak. If I can just leave the floor now to the Commission. Mr. Mattia Pellegrini.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Piotr. So indeed, so let me start by saying where we are, and then so as you are aware, there was a big package which was adopted in 2018, and notably this was made of a revision of the Waste Framework Directive, of the packaging waste directive, the landfill directive, and then just a year after, in 2019, the new single-use plastic directive. As you know, all these three legislative revisions that I mentioned, plus the single-use plastic directive, they all aim to increase recycling and reuse in Europe. And of course, as we know very well from the revision of the landfill directive, to in particular to bring down landfilling to the percentage of 10% by 2035. Just to recall a bit, without going too much into the details, as you know, there are increased targets for recycling and reuse of municipal waste. Notably, the targets are 55% to reach 55% by 2025, 60% by 2030, and 65% by 2035. And in parallel, as I said, to reduce by 2035 landfilling to 10%. For packaging, as you know, there are very specific targets which are foreseen for 2025 and 2030. And of course, there are also a number of measures which should facilitate the achievement of the targets, like better statistics, the electronic registries, and early warning systems. So all of this, in terms of compliance mechanism, should also facilitate the achievement of the targets. And finally, there are also reinforced rules on, for example, extended producer responsibility, but also on specific requirements, for example, as you know very well, for food waste, and also for construction and demolition and backfilling. So this is a bit the plus, as I said, in 2019, in addition to these new targets, both for the Waste Framework Directive and municipal waste, and the one specific one for packaging, there was the additional measures taken by the single-use plastic directives, both in terms of not only in terms of banning certain items, but also introducing certain consumption reduction targets for certain products, as well as mandatory recycled content for beverage bottles made of PET of plastics. So this is a bit the overall description of that package, which I just wanted to recall very briefly. And indeed, as Mr. Bogovič said, what it counts then is the transposition at the level of member states. And as you know, for this set of legislation, the 2018 package, the deadline to transpose that was the 5th of July 2020. So we are aware that a number of member states have not managed to transpose in time. I would say the majority of the member states. So the Commission has already addressed these member states. As you know, there is a clear procedure which is foreseen in these cases, which is first sending a letter of formal notice, then after the letter of formal notice, reasoned opinion, and then if the member states does not comply with the final reasoned opinion, the Commission has the capacity to take the member states in questions into the I mean, at the level of the Court of Justice. So that's, as I said, where we are. I mean, of course, certain decisions are still ongoing, so I cannot indeed prejudge. There will be on a number of cases on how to go forward the decision by the College of Commissioners. Of course, I also would like to say that there are different cases. There are cases where clearly the measures, there was no transposition at all by a given member states, but there are also cases where indeed there was a transposition measures, but then not all the elements of the community legislation were transposed. So there are clearly two cases. Sometimes is an overall non-transposition, in other cases only a partial non-transposition. Of course, this is indeed is our role to do this conformity checks, because indeed we are the guardian of the treaties and of the EU legislation. So it's the role of the Commission to make sure that member states report. As part of that, there was also a specific obligation, also by the same deadline, to produce waste management and national waste management plans, and also waste prevention plans. I mean, that could be done either as a separate plan or as an integrated plan. Either the waste management plans includes also a section on waste prevention, or this can be also two separate plans. There is a clear obligation in our view, in Article 28 of the Waste Framework Directive, of the revised one, that foreseen the obligation for member states to submit that. We are in a situation where, for the time being, we have received 3 of these plans and some of the regional ones, because indeed what is important is that in many actually of the European member states is a joint competence. So we normally are supposed to receive a national waste management plan plus combined with regional ones. That's, for example, is the case for Germany, or the case for Italy, or the case for Spain. We are also in a situation where, for example, in a given country, we have received some regional ones, but not the national one, or vice versa. So we are in touch with a number of member states. We have also been discussing with our own legal service that clearly this is a new obligation. So our reading is a correct reading, that this should be done by member states. So they should have submitted by July of 2020 the revised waste management plans and waste prevention plans. In all honesty, I would like also to mention that some member states have been explaining that there are delays due to the COVID situation. Of course, this can also be understandable, the pressure that COVID has put on national public administration, but indeed the Commission has already sent an administrative letter to the member states to recall that obligation to send both waste management plans and waste prevention plans. Also, let me make an important point. Why it is important to also for member states actually to send these waste management plans and waste prevention plans, because indeed EU funding under the cohesion policy is foreseen that there is a link with the assessment and presentation of this waste management plan. So indeed it is very important that these plans are there because the Commission together, in this case will be DG Regio together with us in DG Environment, that we will have to assess the fulfillment of the so-called enabling conditions in order to authorize spending under the cohesion fund. So there is a clear procedure which we have put in place, but indeed it will be very important for them. They will have to justify how they have updated their waste management plans and waste prevention plans in line with the Waste Framework Directive as it was foreseen by July 2020. So that's I'm raising that point because indeed it's not only legal obligation to provide these waste management plans and waste prevention plans, but it's also because in the legislation there is a clear link with cohesion funding. Last point, last couple of points I wanted to make. Of course, indeed, the achievement of these new targets, which were set in 2018, and will be a challenge for some of the member states. We have to be aware of that. I mean, clearly there are some regions of Europe where, unfortunately, landfilling is still extremely high. I mean, my own region, I'm originally from Rome, and if I take the percentage of landfilling of my own region, Lazio, is still around 60%, which you can imagine how far is from the 10% landfilling. But I think what is important is that there will be a unique opportunity now for member states, in addition to the funding which have been provided through Horizon 2020 and LIFE, with the national recovery resilience plans that many of these member states have to present. Some of them, as you know, they are still missing, and they're supposed to be finalized by the end of April. So we are looking also into that with my team and with other colleagues in the environment. But indeed, that is a unique opportunity for member states to really now use that funding to create the necessary infrastructure in order to meet these ambitious targets in terms of recycling and reuse. Because of course, in order to recycle, you need to have a collection infrastructure in place, plus a strong recycling capacity. But this is really the opportunity for member states, indeed, for example, to invest in recycling capacity, so investing in new plants, especially in the regions where this is very low, and improve the collection infrastructure. So that's, I think, is one message that indeed it is a challenge. The Commission fully understands it is a challenge, but at the same time, with the Recovery Resilience Fund, with the fact that in any case, the majority of that fund needs to be earmarked for the Green Deal, this is a unique opportunity. And we have seen that, let's say, during the discussion has taken place so far, member states, they started sometimes with the wrong foot, which was, we do incineration, and we explained to them that we expect them, rather than to move from landfilling to incineration, which of course waste to energy is better than landfilling. I'm not saying that is not bad, but indeed, if there is an opportunity now to spend money, let's spend it for recycling capacity directly, so to improve. And last but not least is the virtuous circles, so-called, which my unit used to organize, which is how member states can learn from each other. Unfortunately, due to the COVID, this has been stopped. But it is our intention, as soon as things get back to normal, to restart that, because indeed, on that, member states are telling us these are the two main messages we are getting. One is an issue of money. So money now, with the Recovery Resilience Funds, there is not anymore an issue. And the second issue is capacity, how to learn from each other. So with these virtuous circles, which have been very effective in the past under Commissioner Vella, unfortunately, since Sinkevicius as a commissioner is there, we couldn't organize a single one because indeed COVID has unfortunately impacted on that. But it is clearly our intention, and we have already several requests from member states to organize that. We have a contract in place, by the way, which we have not used until now. But as soon as the condition will get back to normal, we will do it. So with that, I think I've tried to cover a bit all the points, Piotr. I did not cover the future about the Circular Economy Action Plan 2.0, but if needed, I can do it with no problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mattia Pellegrini. I to remind everybody from the Commission, from DG Environment, the waste unit. Thank you very much. You actually reminded what was the obligations for member states in the directives that we agreed on in 2018. Also, you linked to important, on one hand, challenges, but also opportunities. You had to link to cohesion funds and to the resilient funds and how the countries are really using it. On the virtuous circles, I can tell you that we, as the EB, we're also doing quite a lot of work with member states on that, and especially our members. But now I will actually, I will ask you to stay with us. There will be some information that you will hear also from other stakeholders, including from EB members, NGOs, because as I understand, the European Commission is taking data mostly from governments, official data. That's it. That's what they provide. But there is also another level of data, of course, and information complaints that are there. So there will be few other speakers today. We will have also industry, producers, companies, and also city authorities and NGOs. But first, I will start with my short presentation. I will share here the presentation. Voila. Okay. So, okay. Hope now it's in. Yes. So yes, thank you to Mattia Pellegrini and to Mr. Bogovič as well, because you reminded about the very important agreement that we had here in this house, in the European Parliament, in Brussels. In 2018, we struck a historical agreement on the waste laws, probably the most ambitious world's framework for waste. And also important is to remind that it was a compromise, actually. What was suggested by the European Parliament was actually even more ambitious. Then it was watered down during the council negotiations at the council. So whatever the member states agreed to, it was already a compromise. Now they seem not to comply with that because, yes, we've seen delays. We've seen also the transposition that is lacking, that is weak, that has some misinterpretation. Interesting to see that many of those countries that delayed or are not transposing well enough are the very same member states that in 2018 were warned by the so-called early warning mechanism. There was a report in 2018 that they will not reach the 2020 target. So we see that they don't do their homework already in the past for the last decade, since 2008, and even now they are delaying their transposition. So the perspective for reaching 2025, 2030, 2035 is really very weak for them, I would say, if they don't take another approach. We've seen that the actions, we actually did a report together with Ecotech and Client Earth, looking at some countries that we asked directly the ministries about their situation. And we've seen very common problems. The actions taken by government do not follow waste hierarchy. Same with the funding. Funding goes from the bottom to incinerator rather than following really the waste hierarchy. The municipalities don't follow, don't take the full responsibility. So the targets that are on countries are not cascaded down back to the local authorities enough. And the EPR schemes are very often insufficient. And as we know, they are crucial to reach also those targets and to get them funding necessary for waste management. So yes, there were delays. That's fair enough. Delays we can understand. By July 25th, only July 2020, only 12 countries have transposed. By now, as I checked this morning, there are still few countries that haven't even notified the Commission of any transposition. That is Estonia, Greece, Spain, Cyprus, Hungary, Malta, and Finland. They don't even inform the Commission what is happening. I mean, not officially. There is a website of the Commission where official notifications are listed. Okay, still, I can understand delay. We can understand delays. There was COVID, although, of course, COVID only started in 2020. I mean, in Europe, there was still lots of time to have consultations and prepare legislations. That does not happen. Okay, even if we still have delay, now we have Circular Economy Action Plan. If the countries are delayed, if they were delayed, they should really take now the next step already, not only to transpose what was the past from 3 years ago, but also take into account the new direction, the new travel direction of travel of the European Commission, the whole European Union, which is the European Green Deal, and that is mostly focusing on prevention. And these actions are still not happening at that level. So we had similar conclusions as the European Commission's reports on early warning mechanisms. We thought that maybe governments need some guidance on what is actually expected from them. So we prepared a lot of different informations, like, for example, this timeline that shows milestones and overviews of obligations, also what the Commission is going to revise next. So these timelines are available in few languages on our website, also Zero Waste Europe. And I invite all the governments and basically all stakeholders to really look at them, because also in those in this PDF, you will also be able to check the best examples of transposition. Yeah, I just said we have to look prospectively also what is happening next. So not only recycling, but really looking at waste prevention. Waste prevention is also a way to achieve more recycling percentage. As we reduce the amount of waste, then of course the percentage will also go up. We have shared few informations on how at member state level countries can achieve that waste prevention, and also shared best examples of already transposed formulations, legal formulations, notably the so-called Annex 4A, which lists economical and legal tools to reach to improve waste management and to go up in the waste hierarchy. But most of all, again, I cannot emphasize more, it's waste prevention. That's the zoom into this situation, into this paper. So I will conclude, because actually the EEB, as you know, is the network of NGOs. It's not only us here working on Brussels level, in Brussels at the European level, but it's all of our members. And I will ask now 4 of our members that can say a few words about their situation. That will be we'll have Poland, Portugal, Ireland, and Germany. Just to say, to conclude, that we are all speaking so much about circular economy. Governments it's on their mouth all the time. But without this political will to work at national level, at local level, without the understanding of waste hierarchy, of funding needed to go to waste prevention and to separate collection and recycling, we will go nowhere. The 2020 targets haven't been achieved in many countries. We know that, even if Eurostat is not yet available, then the post-2020 targets, 2025, 30, 35, will also be very much challenging. We need to cascade down to local authorities this obligation. And of course, shift from waste incineration is obvious, but with the new line of the CEAP, Circular Economy Action Plan, the focus is needed on prevention. And I hope that those that are delayed will really take that into account. Now I will stop here. I invite everyone to ask questions on chat and comment. Also use the tag, hashtag, no time to waste. And now I just ask, I stop sharing, and I ask the first of our member from Portugal, Carmen Lima, from Quercus, to say 1-2 minutes about their situation in Portugal.
Okay, thank you, Piotr. I will abord the state of art in Portugal in 3 points. First point, little focus on prevention and reuse. Today, the value of prevention, for example, does not exceed 1%, and our focus is in recycling, and the investment in prevention and reuse are lower. Second point, low of planning and adaptation to the new goals like package or electric and electronic waste. The new goals are ambitious. There is an inadequate remuneration to the different actors in waste management, poor use of technology, a parallel and illegal markets that may not be processing waste according to best practices, and it is necessary to involve all stakeholders, company, consumers, municipalities, and administration. 3 points, waste destinations camouflage. The recent process of waste directive transposition for the Portuguese law introduced the new use of quarries as a solution for construction and demolition waste or other kinds of waste without adequate control. Even it is a kind of landfill, it is classified as a recovery operation, and it seems like a green solution and are used for goals quantification. there's a high risk of soil and water contamination provided by the deposit of mixed and dangerous waste. Thank you, Piotr.
Thank you, Carmen. Yes, these are the voices from the field. That's very important, NGOs, and I hope the Commission can hear to that. Paweł, what's the situation in Poland?
Thank you, Piotr. Poland is problematic. So we have and we will have enormous problem to complete the goals of the circular economy, unfortunately. This is the result not only of the lies in the transposition of directives, but above all, the lack of understanding, analysis and vision of how to tackle the current issue and to implement circular economy, both at the central and local government levels. There are also problems with proper data reporting and management, as well as access to information, not only by NGOs, but other stakeholders. Currently, the separate waste collection rate in Poland doesn't exceed 35% and recycling 25%. Both are growing too slowly to meet the goals set for 25. Nearly 80% of the capacity of bio-waste treatment plants is missing to meet the Waste Framework Directive recycling targets. There are no action nor discussion on prevention, unfortunately. Instead, strengthening and investing in those areas, central and local governments are promoting waste incineration projects, unfortunately, claiming that this will reduce waste management costs and allow to greener the energy sector, because number of projects are oriented to existing heating plants. If all of 105 incineration projects are currently under consideration were completed, more than 65% of waste would be incinerated. So the opposite what should be recycled according to directive. Therefore, we ask the Commission for very careful assessment of the application that the Polish government will submit to the recovery as well as to cohesion funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Paweł, and thank you so much for your work in Poland, my country. Paweł is from the Society of the Earth and the Polish Zero Waste Association.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I ask Henriette from Deutsche Umwelthilfe, Germany.
Yes, I think you cannot see me. Now you should be. Well, you can hear me at least. So now you can see me. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I think we can agree that Germany has a very green reputation and is often regarded as a role model for other countries. And on the one hand, that is certainly based on some successes that we have in the circular economy, like an effective DRS and Europe's biggest system for refillable bottles. On the other hand, however, we in Germany are the unchallenged EU champion of packaging waste generation, with 227 kilograms per capita, and that is 3 times more than, for example, in Romania or Bulgaria. Therefore, we as an NGO don't understand why Germany has remained so strikingly unambitious in the transposition of the latest waste directives. For example, the transposition of the Waste Framework Directive followed a bare minimum approach with no focus on waste prevention or reuse, which are important, as Piotr already mentioned. The French circular economy law, in comparison, is a lot more ambitious in some respects, and it introduced concrete measures to reduce single-use packaging, to counter false green claims, and to promote longer product life, for example. The next directive, the SUPD, here Germany could have placed much more emphasis on supporting the already existing reusable solutions that we have and that only need to be scaled up. And instead, Germany again went with a bare minimum approach, and where there was flexibility, has chosen very soft measures so far. And also, since Mr. Pellegrini just mentioned the possibility of funding the circular economy through the Recovery and Resilience Funds, I would like to mention that the word circular economy not even appears once in the German plan. All in all, there are many lessons that Germany has learned and that could be helpful for other countries, like that a strong focus on incineration, like we just heard, causes enormous amounts of greenhouse gas emissions, and that a throwaway mentality is detrimental to the environment. And also that rules for EPR need to be strict, eco-modulated, and transparent to have an effect. And therefore, I think it's important that Germany itself paves the way for the true solutions. And we as an NGO are going to keep pushing them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Henriette from Deutsche Umwelthilfe. So all those NGOs testimonies are very important. They show the nitty-gritties that are sometimes not reflected in whatever is official from the government. So we had also one more from Jack from Ireland. However, he cannot connect, maybe later. I will ask to prepare colleagues from EEA, European Environmental Agency, Ioannis. Just wanted to say again, thank you to NGOs for their enormous work. Henriette, you mentioned at the end the waste incineration as a very bad contributor to the climate crisis, and I was worried also when Mr. Pellegrini said that waste incineration is not bad. I think we have to review and maybe talk about that a bit during the presentation, during the debate that will be later. I ask everybody to ask questions in the chat. We will choose some of them, and I ask Ioannis from European Environmental Agency to present. Ioannis is a waste expert at the EEA. He holds a PhD in life cycle assessment and have worked a lot already with the national level and EU level. Please give us some overview of the EEA works on this and maybe waste prevention also. Thank you.
Thanks, Piotr, and thanks a lot for the invitation and the very good moderation you have been doing so far. I have now I can share the screen. I hope you can all see the presentation.
Yes.
So today I would like to speak about the work we're doing at the EEA related to the monitoring of implementation of waste legislation at EU level. The EEA's role is mainly to provide sound, relevant, and timely information to policymakers, including the Commission, but also at national level. And this, of course, has links to monitoring. And this capabilities of the EEA have been recognized in the legal text of the Waste Framework Directive. So we got two specific legal mandates in the legislation that have to do with monitoring of progress regarding waste implementation, waste legislation implementation. And I have highlighted here in the text that the monitoring has to do with the progress and evolution towards specific targets, such as the decoupling of waste generation from economic growth and the road ahead towards the targets that you have mentioned also before, recycling targets and the landfilling. So based on these two mandates, we have two separate strands of work that I will speak about today. The first one is on waste prevention, that you have, the speakers before me have rightly recognized that waste prevention stands on the top of the waste hierarchy, and it's, of course, the most desirable option for waste. Waste generation should be decoupled from economic growth, and we can monitor how we're doing towards that. And this is a graph here that shows what we define as waste.
Oh, I'm getting the beach ball again, you see?
Hi.
May I ask everyone to mute? Of course, except Ioannis.
Yes.
Please mute everyone.
Sorry, yeah.
No, look. Have a look at my screen, Regine.
Yes. Could you please mute perhaps, because I'm getting a lot of noise. Thanks.
Go ahead, should be fine.
I was saying the concept of waste intensity is the comparison of waste generation per unit of GDP, and in the graph you can see this.
Okay, it's an internet connection issue.
It probably is, yeah.
Okay, I think
well, that's one of the problems of living in Ireland.
I'm sorry, Ioannis. Jack and Regine, can you please mute now? We will continue with Ioannis. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
I'm muting even now.
You can see the comparison of the countries, how they've been doing in terms of waste intensity between 2008 and 2018. And the graph tells you, you don't really have to read it, that for 7 countries, the waste generation is growing faster than the GDP, while all the other ones show what we call the relative decoupling. So that means that waste generation is still increasing, but at a lower pace than the economy. So we have achieved relative decoupling, and this graph at EU level confirms that, because the yellow line, which is the GDP, is increasing at a much faster pace than the orange and blue lines, which represent waste generation. So we do have a relative decoupling, but we're not progressing very well towards the ultimate goal of absolute decoupling. That's one key message. However, what we are trying to do at the EA is to try to explain things also. Try to explain what are the factors that shape waste generation and how we can tackle those. Meaning that waste prevention measures are not solely responsible for curbing the waste generation curve. For example, population is an obvious factor that affects that. More people generate more waste. If we're also richer, we grow our economies, we tend to consume more products and these become waste, therefore leading to higher waste generation. Another factor is, of course, the structure of the economy itself. So we have documented evidence that the structure of the European economy is moving towards services, and services is a less intensive economic sector in terms of waste generation. That also matters. But we're also trying to identify the exact role of specific waste prevention measures that the countries are taking in order to tackle waste generation. And they have been doing so for a while now. The first waste prevention programs were published in the countries in 2013 according to legislation. Some countries did that even before that. And now, as Mr. Pellegrini said in the beginning, all countries are called to revise those in light of the changes in the waste package, as we call it, in 2018, and also of the single-use plastics directive. And of course, I can also confirm from this overview that there are some delays. But still, the programs have been in place, and they have included some measures which we are continuously mapping. I'm not going to go into the detail of that because we don't have much time. Instead, I would move into the second part of the presentation, which is the early warning mechanism. This is a mechanism described in the waste framework, the packaging waste directive, and the landfill. And the early warning mechanism is supposed to lead to an early warning report. This report will be published every time 3 years before the target dates. And here you can see when the target dates are for the different waste streams and also for landfill. This report, the early warning report, will aim to do 3 distinct things. First of all, identify the countries that are at risk of not meeting the targets, each of those targets. Number 2, the report will identify best practice, things that the countries are doing that have been proven to be effective in improving their recycling and reducing their landfill. And the last task is undertaken by the Commission. The early warning report will also propose some policy recommendations for how to reach the targets while there is still time. How do we do that? We have a number of what we call the success and risk factors. That all of these together are supposed to, we assume, they influence the probability for a country to meet the target. And we color code those. At the end of the day, we sum up all the color codings in a systematic way, and we come up with a single score to determine whether a country is at risk of missing the target. Here is an example of success and risk factor that says that at the time of the publication of the report, if the latest available data show that the country is more than 15 percentage points away from the target, then it's judged very unlikely to actually make it in time to reach the target. The success and risk factors are of various types, and here I have clustered them in groups to show that there's a lot of different things that influence the probability of a country to reach the target. And that's exactly what we're monitoring: current situation and past trends, legal instruments such as the timely transposition of the directives, economic instruments such as taxes for landfilling that will promote recycling, the way that separate collection systems are structured. Are they convenient and accessible for citizens to actually do their part in the recycling, in increasing recycling? How do the extended producer responsibility schemes work? Are they eco-modulated? Are they taking recyclability into account? How about the treatment capacity? The capacity for biowaste treatment that will soon start to be separately collected in a mandatory fashion in all countries is a major part for reaching the recycling targets for municipal waste. So do the countries have enough capacity to deal with that? And of course, the last one is the data quality. And all of these we sum up together in a single score, as I said, where we try to determine if a country is at a low, medium, or high risk of not reaching the targets. The first report, and that's my final note on this, is to be published next year, 3 years ahead of a lot of packaging waste recycling targets and, of course, of the municipal waste target of 55%. Thanks a lot, and of course, always open to questions. Hope you have many. And Piotr, right back to you, I suppose.
Thank you very much, Ioannis. Ioannis from EEA, European Environmental Agency. Thanks a lot for your enormous work on methodologies for prevention and giving the evidence how this is important, including the decoupling and actually rethinking growth, economic growth, which is also a big part of your work and our own as well at the EB. We'll move to the next speaker, which is Ana Devar from Spain. I just wanted to touch upon your points. The early warning mechanism, great if you work on it, but we should not, maybe I would ask the Commission to change the approach, because we had already early warning mechanism in 2018 and it did not really motivate enough binding the member states. So I hope the next early warning mechanism will really mobilize those countries in a binding way. And great, you also mentioned a list of different measures that will be helpful to reach the target. Next to landfill tax, I would also add incineration tax. That my colleagues maybe also can say and support, give evidence for that is working. I ask Ana Gutierrez de Var from Spanish NGO, the network also of NGOs, Retorna, to share with us, an NGO, to share with us their views about the Spanish achievements or lack of achievements and how is it actually going on there. Thank you. Ana?
Yes. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us to this very relevant debate. And I wanted to start bringing your attention to this photograph. We took this picture. It's not a river in a developing country. It's the mouth of the Segura River in Spain, in Alicante. These thousands, it was taken in over a year ago, and each time there's a big rainfall, winds, or the breaker is not working, all these thousands of bottles flow into the Mediterranean. So this is, as Retorna, which is part of the Zero Waste Alliance in Spain, this is what we are working to avoid. So if I could have the next presentation, Regina, thank you. Where are we at this moment? This is not singular to Spain. There are many other countries in the European Union, but I think it's important to bring this to light. And we have just chosen 6 numbers, but they all go in the same direction. Over 60% of the municipal waste we generate is going to landfill, with no pre-treatment in many cases. We have figures of 50%, 40%, 30%. There is very little control of how much is going without pre-treatment, but it's too much. The recycling rate, the official recycling rate is 35%, but we know once the new calculation methods are applied, this is going to be reduced significantly, because this is including the biostabilized organic material from separate collection. So this is more than will be in very soon. 80% of our municipal waste is collected mixed. We're only collecting about 20% separately. We had today news from our Secretary of State, Hugo Moran, that this will be dealt with in the new waste law. We really need to go up and to revert these figures. Another thing that has been mentioned today, and that's very important for us, is the EPR schemes. In Spain, they're either incomplete, like the packaging EPR scheme, which is only covering the costs of the waste, the packaging waste that goes to the right bin. And this is about 1/3, 2/3 are going either to the mixed fraction or to the environment. Today, there was a report from Greenpeace saying that this incomplete EPR system costs the taxpayers, costs us 1,700 million euros. This is fresh news. It was published today by Greenpeace in Spain. Other EPR schemes are inefficient. For example, the tire EPR scheme is being upgraded. It's inefficient or inexistent, like in many other countries. Textiles, furniture, this will also be tackled in the new waste law. And something that's very important and has also been mentioned by the previous speaker is we have no DRS in Spain. It's a hot country. Before the pandemic and probably after, we are a touristic destination. 50 million bottles and cans are put onto the market each day. And 30 million are littered, end up in our environment, like the photograph that I showed to start the presentation. They are landfilled or they're burnt. So we really need reuse targets for all products and very concretely for packaging. And we need an inclusive DRS, and we need it now. There is no time to waste. And then another very serious issue for a country like Spain that's being decertified in a growing matter is the separation of organic waste. We have 5%. I was talking with my colleagues from Amigos de la Tierra, Friends of the Earth, and they said it wasn't even 5%. It's 3% if we talk about well-collected organic waste. So this is something that we urgently have to look at. Could we go to the next one? But we could give many more figures, but I think with that, we go to the next one. So what did we do? In a historical move, 16 organizations, including trade unions, the 6 members of the Zero Waste Alliance and regional NGOs, have filed a complaint against the Kingdom of Spain for not complying with the EU targets. This is affecting our health and our environment. And this is not against the current government. This is to help the current government to publish and to approve really ambitious laws. And we hope the Commission will look into the drafts and give a push to the government to increase the ambition. Can we go to the next one, please? So the transposition now, we are late. It should have been, like many other countries last year. We're in the process of transposition. It's right now in legal revision in the State Council. Mr. Hugo Moran today confirmed that the text will be sent to the Council of Ministers and it will be in the Congress in mid-May. We expect it to be approved in Q3 or Q4, depending on the debate in Congress and Senate. Landfill directive has been transposed, and packaging packaging waste will be transposed once the waste law is approved. And some of the provisions of the soup directive have been included, but ambition is minimum. Only what was in the soup directive have been included. We wanted to go further, but for what we know, we have just done what was compulsory. So, looking at this, can we go to the next one?
Anna, I will ask you to conclude.
Okay, so we know that industry is behind the wheel, and we have examples of industry putting spikes in an ambitious legislation. So we need the government to revise and to go beyond what is now in the law. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Ana, for this insight in the Spanish law. As you see, the delay is one thing, but second is how actually Commission has to precisely look and compare whether those laws are transported in a correct way and how much lobbying is there. And also, thank you for giving the numbers. very, very striking numbers of how much packaging is being lost and how much industry is actually ignoring that and working against the implementation of the deposit return systems that prove to work in other countries, such as, for example, at least for something we can praise the Germany, so deposit return systems. Organic matter is also a problem in many countries, not separately collected, and composting infrastructure is not existent, not enough. I will ask next speaker, that is already now we move to companies, entrepreneurs, that is Arthur Tenfolde from Ecopreneur, which is the European Sustainable Business Federation. And yeah, so Arthur, thanks for having for being with us, and yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Piotr. I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, if you can make the yeah, presentation.
I'm trying to start the presentation. Yes, so yes. Thanks to the organizer, especially also to Mr. Bogovič and to the EB for inviting Ecopreneur to speak on this occasion and to also have the discussion on this important topic. I saw that we now have something like 230 participants, so I'm really glad with the yeah, with also the interest in this topic. And I will speak mostly about the urgent need felt by our SMEs to prevent waste. Because I'm working for ecopreneur.eu, the European Federation of Sustainable Business, and we represent about 2,900 small and medium-sized enterprises and about 100 larger companies. And they are all dedicated to delivering sustainable products and services. And well, here in the middle at the top, you see the Ecopreneur logo. It's a bit disappearing almost in the number of logos that represent only a snapshot of our 3,000 companies. And in the square, you see our 6 direct members, and those are the national green business networks in Germany, France, Austria, the Netherlands, Belgium, and also in Sweden. And also you see that most of them, by the way, are SMEs, but there are also some large companies. You see, for instance, Target, Nanomerz, Interface, Remondis, and Humana, which is an SME, that are also forming our advocacy group, and they help us directly with the advocacy. And these companies, so they are entrepreneurial, they are ecopreneurs, so ecological entrepreneurs, and they are mostly established, but also startups. And they are manufacturers, but also deliver services. We only have a few waste management companies, which is why we are focusing on like green production and sustainability. So they realize sustainable production, distribution, consumption, and recycling. And some of them are really regenerative champions that generate a positive impact on the climate and on the environment. And they're successful. Most of them, however, are still niche players. And that is also an important link to the policy. And Ecopreneur is the political voice for sustainable business in Europe, especially for SMEs. And we're the only one that is asking for strong sustainability policies at the EU level. Our goal is a sustainable economy with a focus on circular economy. And at our website, we have several reports, and we are also now involved in 2 EU projects. Well, moving on to the next one, I wanted to go back to 5 years ago when we were just founded. And our first director, Katharina Reuter, now still director of the German member, asked for the following on behalf of Ecopreneur: effective measures to meet ambitious targets, financial incentives for producers and consumers to extend the Ecodesign Directive to circular design, and an attractive research program for companies, also SMEs. And well, first of all, we appreciate the progress made on the EU regulatory level, and because I've never seen legislation move so fast. However, our companies experience almost nothing of the measures taken. So their efforts to deliver the green products and services, they feel they are not rewarded for that. I think that our member companies should be by now multinationals or fast growing, really fast growing. And the corona pandemic has shown how fast sectors can be affected by government policies and yeah, we think that this slow move should end right now. And so just briefly, why is this so important? Because SMEs and also the larger companies, they face several barriers to grow, to deliver these services. For instance, a lack of demand pool for low carbon circular products and services. If I move on, about the following. In 2019, we made an inventory of the circular economy in Europe, in all member states. So we have a detailed picture for every member state. This just shows one graph for Estonia. What this showed is that there are 27 individual stories, but there are also front runners. The front runners were Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. Then there was a platoon, Austria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Hungary, Ireland, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Poland, Portugal, and Slovakia. But there was also a group of laggards, and you see them here on the slide: Bulgaria, Cyprus, Estonia, Finland, maybe surprising, Greece, Latvia, Malta, and Romania were really behind on the scores. And you see here an example of the score, and it has we've taken out all the available data, like the Eco Innovation Index, resource efficiency, the recycling rate, packaging, also the circular materials use rate. We looked at incineration. The only thing we did not look at, we did not even look at landfill. And still, this list shows a remarkable overlap with the countries that I saw are behind with implementing now this Waste Framework Directive. By the way, Estonia is shown here, and we're very glad that the Estonian Responsible Business Forum is currently applying for Ecopreneur membership. So what I would like to conclude with is some recommendations. Well, the first, listening to the talks today, our most important priority for this year is 100% green conditions on EU support via the European Recovery Plan. Now, one green condition could be to implement the Waste Framework Directive. If this is so important for this case, maybe that could be one of the first. Another really important thing for us for this year and next year is ambitious implementation of the European Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, the climate policy, and the SME strategy. I want to just state that, I think I did not mention it, but the problem lies with the member states. The European Commission is very proactive. They are now making a wonderful plan for the Sustainable Products Initiative that was presented this morning. The European Parliament produced a wonderful report in February on the Circular Economy Action Plan, but the Council is holding back. So what we ask from at the EU level, and especially from the member states, is rapid final decision on the minus 55% CO2 reduction in 2030. Because ecopreneurs, they urgently need rapid and concerted actions of governments at the national and the EU level. And second, strengthening the roles of SMEs, for instance, via supporting regional circularity hubs. Then the implementation of strong economic incentives was already mentioned by the EEA, like circular procurement, EPR, carbon pricing, etc. Also, for instance, with EPR to cover eco-modulation of fees in all waste-intensive sectors, so that real eco-design is also circular design is fostered. And then from the Sustainable Products Initiative, minimum requirements for low-carbon circular design for all end products in resource and waste-intensive sectors, and that seems to be the plan of the European Commission. I was very glad about that. An ambitious textile strategy. And then about the Council, we asked from the European Council or the member states to switch to majority voting in the EU Council on tax matters, because they've already been blocking a proposal from the European Parliament and the Commission to change the VAT directive. And the VAT directive is needed to change that to make it possible to have low VAT for circular products and services. Well, then what we ask from the member states directly is stop procrastinating. stop watering down the ambitions, and rapid implementation of all EU directive concerning sustainability. Also, other things that member states can do to get on track with the circularity, and this followed from our own 2019 report, which is, by the way, available on our website, is to create national circular economy roadmaps, to start national Green Deals, projects on circular procurement, also to found these circularity hubs to help SMEs and companies and municipalities with implementing circular models. This is quite complex. That's one of the hurdles for the circular economy. Even if you want to become circular, how do you do it? I already mentioned low VAT rates for instance, repair services. They can implement that right away. That is permitted. And what they could also do is start a joint coordinated action with a group of member states to implement the tax shift. Just start with at the national level. And finally, to shift investments away from municipal wastes incineration. So thank you. That was our contribution. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Arthur. Thank you for giving us this list of what the sustainable and progressive businesses really need to scale up and thrive in a society where people and nature thrive together. Indeed. And I also liked, I will ask Johannes in a second to take the floor. I just want to say, you mentioned very well that where is the bottleneck? Member states. So the council, when we mean the council, it means member states, it means the national representations of the ministries of environment. So as many people listen to us here today, over 200 in their capitals, maybe you do not always know what your country is saying in the capital and what is saying also your representation in Brussels. And very often, as Arthur mentioned, and me myself also from my experience, we see that in the council, the representations are really watering down and playing kind of double play here. So really, this is important that in member states, national companies, national NGOs are really holding them accountable of what they say, both in the council, capital and in Brussels during the council meetings. Thank you very much for this important political statement. And now, Johannes, Johannes Weber from Food and Drinks Europe, that is a net circular economy working group at Food Drinks Europe. He's also a European Affairs Manager at Nestle. Johannes, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Piotr.
Perspective of the producers.
Great, thanks a lot, Piotr, for the introductory words. Also, thanks a lot to Mr. Bogovič and the intergroup for inviting Food Drink Europe, but also for inviting myself to speak today. So I'm speaking a little bit with a double hat on, to be honest. As Piotr said, I'm the chair of the Circular Economy Working Group within Food Drink Europe, which is the sector association, or which is the industry association, if you like, for all food and drink companies in Europe. So we have a lot of big companies. Myself, I'm working also for Nestle, but there is also a very important amount of SMEs within this Food Drink Europe association. So when we speak about or when we discuss the waste law within the association, it's very closely linked to packaging, obviously. The sector, the food and drink and food and beverage sector, if you like, is using an important amount of packaging. But as such, we are material neutral. So we don't really rely on plastic, we don't rely on paper or metal or whatsoever the material is. For us, it's just important that the packaging we are using fulfills a certain amount of functionalities. So this is about food safety obligation. This is also about quality. So the beverage or the food should be arriving at the consumer in a good quality. It's also about transport. We want to avoid food waste, and this is why we're using packaging. And it's also about giving the consumer the right portion and also the right information on packaging. So I guess it's important to remember that we actually don't sell packaging, we sell products. However, and I think this has been also touched upon with the previous speakers, there is definitely an issue with packaging which ends up in the environment. So I would even like to dare that this is actually waste, but what is recycled should not be considered as waste. So let's speak about the packaging ending up in the environment, in the nature, landfill, in rivers, as we have been seeing in Spain. So this is definitely a major problem, and I think it's crucially important that also the industry, the food and drink sector, using a good amount of packaging, also acknowledged its responsibility and also the role we can play here. So our overall ambition is to provide to consumers food and drink products with the least environmental footprint. And therefore, we're looking in all the potential kind of solutions. So this means reduce material, packaging material, increase the recycled material we are using, but also looking into alternatives, like for instance, reuse, packaging-free solutions, refill solutions. Then also we want, and this is one further step in our ambition, stop littering. And this is what I said, nothing of our packaging should end up in the environment. And to ensure a sustainable growth. So these three elements are actually crucial, and I think also a part of our ambition towards a sustainable food systems. When it comes to our efforts, I think here I would like to highlight three main elements. There is first the design element. So how do we design the packaging? Here we talk a lot about recyclable packaging, switching from more complex structure into easier to recycle monomaterial structures. Also see about what can we do in terms of innovative material, like for instance, switching to paper solutions if this is possible. Lately, Nestle switched the whole Smarties brand actually to paper packaging. And then also when it comes to design, we talk about recycled content using basically more recyclate, less virgin material. But also design for us means reuse and refill systems. So Nestle launched a couple of months ago a pilot in France, where actually we are partnering with Loop and the French supermarket Carrefour, where we have a kind of reuse system. So in the supermarket in Paris, in the Paris region, you have little stainless containers, for instance, with cereals or chocolate powder. The consumer basically goes there, takes the container home, consumes it there, and then brings the container back, and this could be even collected back at home. So we have this reuse system we are piloting. Another interesting project is what we did last year, for instance, in a couple of supermarkets in Switzerland, where we installed like big 2 meters high containers where the consumer can go with its own recipient or a little bag or whatsoever, a container, and actually get the exact amount of, for instance, pet food or coffee he or she prefers. So I guess this is a design element. So the next step would be infrastructure. We heard a lot that EPS, EPR, DRS systems are crucially important. And I think here the investment in good, well-performing infrastructure comes basically back to our role and responsibility. So I guess the proper functioning of EPRs is crucially important. Also, the industry pays a lot of EPR fees, and we actually want also that those fees are in a way used to recycle effectively our packaging. And when I talk about the EPR fees and packaging, I think also what is important that this is not only, let's say, the low-hanging fruits to be recycled, like for instance a PET bottle, which is extremely good to be recycled, and then also the recyclates to be used. But I would also flag more tricky to collect and recycle flexible packaging, which is like, for instance, flexible materials, if you think about our sweet wrappers, for instance. And I guess also infrastructure is important when we talk about reuse and refill systems, because to make this really beneficial also from an environmental point of view, you need quite a good logistic actually to, as I said, bring those containers back to the supermarket, wash them, refill them, the consumer has to take them. So this has to be pretty well thought through to make really sure that the full life cycle assessment is beneficial. And then the third element is the consumer. So I guess in particular, brand owners have a big responsibility also to help the consumer to raise awareness and to give the consumer easy to understand information how to basically dispose of the used packaging in the right way so that this packaging can be recycled and then also reused again. In the end, I think only if we have those three elements together, so the design element needs to be done well, infrastructure needs to be there, the consumer needs to be aware and well informed. I think this is what actually we are measured also against when it comes to brand owners. And only if our packaging with a brand on it is not ending up on beaches, in rivers, in the ocean, I think this is then when we are successful also from the food and beverage industry when it comes to the circular economy. So what we are supporting are actually the high recycling ambition and waste legislation ambition of the European Union, because this also eventually helps us to fulfill our own industry commitments. I think the member states, and we heard this in all the speaking points before, and the member states are crucially important today. I don't know how many national representatives are in the audience here, but maybe this is also a little message for the MEPs to take back to their national governance and ministry to make sure that the ambition and then the implementation is also happening in the member states. I guess what also is very important is a harmonized infrastructure and a harmonized information for the consumer across the single market, because it doesn't make a lot of sense if you have a couple of member states with an extremely well advanced infrastructure and then a couple of member states lagging behind. Because when we are as an industry putting products on the markets, we do this across the European Union and not only in a couple of member states. I guess the investment part is also crucial. I don't even want to stress it too much because we have heard this. I think there is a big opportunity for member states in their national recovery plans to also earmark investment when it comes to circular economy projects. And then what we also support is definitely a multi-stakeholder approach. So to have civil society, to have the legislator, to have also industry around the table inputting potential legislations, but also when we talk about extra legal initiatives, like for instance, the European Commission Circular Plastic Alliance, but we also saw a lot of national plastic pacts and also European plastic pact growing in the last months and year. So I think this is also crucially important to have all the relevant actors around the table. And when it comes, and this is my last point, when it comes to our specific ask, I think the enforcement of the existing waste legislation is very, very important. We heard about the new methodology, how to basically calculate the recycling rate. So I think this is crucially important that also all the member states implement those new calculation rates, and then also that the recycling rates which are reported to the European Commission are also transparent, and that the Commission can really verify and maybe even audit them to make sure we have comparable recycling rates across the European Union. Another element would be also the harmonized implementation. I think especially now looking at a couple of member states, how they transpose waste legislation, I think we see big difference from one country to another country. And if we want to have a flourishing single market and also a free flow of goods, I think it's pretty important to have here kind of harmonized implementation, and maybe also a little call on the Commission, because we feel that the Commission should be the safeguard kind of the single market. And the last element would be around the availability of food grade recycled material. This is crucially important, as I said earlier, as a kind of circular economy element, and in particular for the food and beverage industry. So here we would also appreciate very much kind of more recycling processes to be authorized and to basically produce food grade recycled materials. We have some processes today for PET, but we would also appreciate very much more polymers to be used in food grade applications. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Johannes, from this overview and demands also from the producers, in this case from Nestle. Indeed, I will ask to prepare our colleagues from ACR Plus. It's interesting to see that you call for harmonization. That's important for sure. However, this is also a bit weird to hear only that that harmonization is necessary from EU and from member states, and within the producers, we see different approaches. In some countries, you support the positive return system, in other not. And yeah, that's maybe we can touch upon that later. And also one point you mentioned, yes, one of the three main elements, you mentioned infrastructure, consumer, but also design, eco-design. And that is something that I still would say that flexible packaging, if it's difficult to recycle, why it is put on the market. I know it's food protection, but there are probably other solutions as well. And I would like to see the invention and the marketing invention, the genius design of producers to go into this direction, to actually replace what is difficult to collect and difficult to recycle, and not because this is, as you said, one of the main drivers, design.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want me to reply right away, or maybe in the Q&A part?
I think there will be Q&A because there are also other questions on this.
Thanks.
So I introduce now, Francesco Lembo from ACR Plus, who is a managing director at this Association of Cities and Regions for Sustainable Resource Management. He has also worked a lot with different administrations, local level and national. So that's important. That's the last speaker today. That concludes with the view of the cities that are directly responsible for achieving the targets in the regions.
Thanks a lot, Piotr, and we are very happy to be part of. Thanks for the invitation. We are very happy to add the angle of, let me add not only cities, but cities and regions, so decentralized authorities to the debate. And we will end with a few considerations which are very based on their angle. A few words about the association. ACR Plus is an international network of cities and regions. We share the aim of promoting sustainable resource management through prevention, outsource, reuse and recycle, and accelerating circular economy. We've born in 1994 when a small group of regional authorities were called to implement and transpose the previous waste framework directive. So we are keeping a bit the nature of our work, evolving it into a wider circular economy frameworks. But still we are coming there at interlacing it and now trying to give some inputs based on the experience of the concrete practical work of local authorities. Right now we represent a bit more than 100 local authorities around Europe and in the wider Mediterranean area. 3 points I'm going through very briefly. I'll try to be as short as possible. I won't spend too much on the EU legislation. It was already very well mentioned by previous speakers. What I would like to highlight is that we have the EU legislation on a global scale is one of the most developed. The first waste framework directive was modified several times. We already have other legislation to complete the picture. And within the latest amended waste laws, we have specific targets on which we don't want to discuss the level of ambition now. From using the angle of decentralized authority, I would focus on a couple of elements that pose some question on the complexity of targets analysis. First one is about regional differences. We have huge differences between regions which are not reflected by national numbers. This example is coming from the analysis carried out in France during the Collector's Age 2020 project. Other countries like Italy and Spain might have even major differences of regional performances, and this is something that should be taken into account, reinforcing data collection and analysis at the regional level to better articulate than national targets. Second point to reinforce what we are talking about is about capture rates in local areas having different population density. You can see how clearly the proportion of divertible waste as a percentage of what is diverted from disposal, it decreases strongly with growth of population density. And this is something highlighting even more the importance of regional data to analyze national performances. Last point about the the last update of waste framework directives is on the impact of the measurement points. So let's take into consideration where measurement points are set. If we take glass stream as an example, we can see how the shift in measurement points from the end of collection and sorting phase to the entrance in the main end application has a relevant impact on the path needed to reach recycling targets. And this is another layer of complexity to be added. Let's take a case which is straight moving us to our conclusion. Plastic packaging. We have a good enabling framework for EPR in Europe. We have them from end-of-life vehicles. We have from waste electronic and electric and electronic equipment. We have for batteries, and we have EPR for packaging explicitly encouraged in the PPWD directive, and even if not mandatory. What I want to highlight here, if we give a look on impacts on packaging, as packaging sector is the main user of plastics in Europe, accounting around 40% of plastic demand, EPR is intended to achieve environmental improvements and has two primary environmental goals. While the first one is to provide incentives for manufacturers to design resource efficient and low impact products, we are getting there. We are having better and better design of packaging with a lower weight. The second objective is to ensure effective end of life collection and environmentally sound treatment of collected products, and we are improving in recycling targets, but we have a big but. Let's look at plastic production trends overall. They are still increasing, and this has to let us pose some questions. Do we need more European standards rule for EPR? Do we have to reconsider the lack of sanction toward member states and other actors like producer responsibility organization in the national system? Let's move to the two final conclusions we want to go on, which are all on measurement points. I'm using an example here. This is the More Circularity Less Carbon campaign starting in 2019 from Messier Plus with Zero Waste Scotland, which is our actual president, and it is based on the carbon metric tool, which goes beyond the weight-based waste measurements, and it tries to enable users to get more complete pictures on how products and material consumed and waste generated contribute to climate change. Consequentially, how local authorities and stakeholders can reduce these impacts through informed and targeted interventions. So we already applied this tool in Pays de la Loire, as we are seeing the case here, and in other 5 regions between Brussels, Genova, and currently in Ireland, Navarra, and Odense municipality. This graph here helps me to show why we need to look at more complex and qualitative indicators if we want to tackle a wider range of externalities like CO2 emission, carbon footprint, and hazardous components. You can see here in Pays de la Loire region, as a reduction of CO2 emission linked with material resources requires a reshuffling of regional regulatory intervention priorities. Second graph, it is to highlight how when we move our angle from weight and volume-based measurements, the importance on preventions becomes even more relevant. This is the case of factors contributing to carbon emissions of material streams. While recycling, which is the orange bar at the bottom, can lead to some carbon savings, the big bone to be beaten is on the generation phase, thus including production, transportation, and consumption of those materials. This is one of the key factors leading us to advocate strongly for development of clear targets linked with waste prevention, especially if we want to strengthen the bond between waste reduction and climate change mitigation. Last input is about keeping consistency and support different layers of policy making on resource efficiency from national to regional and municipal. And we need not only to combine quantitative and qualitative targets, but we really also need to combine global targets with sector-specific priorities. We really needed to decline better how the targets can be from a global level, they can be interact with policies to prevent material production, circulation, and thus waste prevention for specific material flows. And that was all by my side.
Thank you very much, Francesco. So Francesco from the association representing cities and regions. Lots of data, very interesting. And we will make sure that all participants receive it because this is really a good knowledge and experience at your level. I was missing maybe from presentation, but we can in the debate talk about this. Few speakers previously mentioned the recovery funds. And actually, those funds will really be very much needed at the regional level to achieve those they are responsible for. so the conditionality of green conditions is really also important. But yeah, in any case, very interesting and difficult for me to digest now. Let's move on to maybe to the MEPs. Thank you, Francisco. And we have two MEPs with us from France and from Malta. Maybe I digested already what was said today. So I will ask you for some remarks from your side. Maybe first, MEP Cyrus Engerer from Malta, who was also at the Ministry of Malta previously and sits today at the Envy Committee at the Parliament, so has really much interest in following this file.
Thank you, Piotr. I would like to start by thanking the European Environmental Bureau and the Secretariat of the Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development for inviting me to this webinar and for all the work done to set it up. I also thank the speakers who have contributed to this webinar and to this key area of EU legislation. The last year has served to teach us a great lesson in understanding the weaknesses in the way that we are used to live, and in reminding us that many systems on which we base our day-to-day life are inherently flawed and unsustainable. This is true also when it comes to producing and consuming materials. In this regard, Europe has set out ambitious plans for a change in direction and move forward sustainably, which I fully concur with. The target to speed up the transition towards a carbon neutral and zero waste Europe is central to the Circular Economy Action Package and to the EU Green Deal. However, this target can only be achieved through the implementation of the legislative package on waste, which was adopted in 2018 to boost recycling and cut waste. The new obligations set out through this legislative package were meant to lay down the groundwork for the achievement of a circular economy in Europe. The ultimate target was to invest in business models which are, at the end of the day, more sustainable and more resilient through three pieces of legislation: the Waste Framework Directive, the Landfill Directive, and the Packaging Waste Directive. However, we have seen big delays and lack of compliance with the transposition deadlines stipulated in these pieces of legislation, among which, from my own country, back home, Malta, which is one of the laggards, let's say, when it comes to these legislation. We have also seen that many member states have fallen behind on the 50% recycling target for 2020, making it even more challenging for the European Union to substantially limit the amount of waste generated across our continent. This unmanageable amount of generated waste and our struggle with reversing it has in turn been leading to other taxing practices, such as the export of waste to third countries, whereby the necessary safeguards for treatment cannot always be guaranteed, and therefore operating against a truly circular economy. On the other hand, through these practices, we have also encouraged the escalation and spread of irresponsible plastic use and contributed to greater social and environmental injustice. Many member states have fallen behind on other targets, including the 2018 legislative package, such as with regards to the 10% target obliging member states to limit the amount of municipal waste due to be landfilled to 10% or less of municipal waste generated by 2035. We have also seen studies showing that there are substantial challenges in meeting this target and that this may lead member states to turn to waste incineration as an alternative, leading to a situation which would be at loggerheads in reality with the principles and goals of a circular economy. The fact that these targets are not being met when they are in fact the minimum requirements expected to be met by member states points towards the need of a more balanced approach. On the one hand, we need to reassess aspects which may be working against our ultimate goals in the circular economy, but on the other hand, on those aspects which are serving their needs and where member states are not complying with transposition deadlines and the targets of the 2018 legislative framework, the Commission, I believe, should move forward with legal action, new or escalated, in order to ensure the implementation of EU law. At the same time, however, it is important to provide member states with the support needed to achieve progress in those targets where they are falling behind, and then identifying the root causes of delays and shortcomings. All this, I may add, while making sure that the Commission understands that one size does not fit all. And I think that that is an important principle. Finally, to conclude, I want to speak a little about some of the ideas that were spoken about by earlier speakers, and I will focus mainly on what Mr. Pellegrini said from the GNV, from the Commission. With regards to the link between the submission of national waste management and prevention plans with the funds under cohesion policy, and I give my full support to such action from the Commission, because while enough time should be given to all member states, a link between the successful submission and implementation of plans with funding should definitely be made and strengthened. And secondly, my last reflection and comment also goes to Mr. Pellegrini, and it relates to his point on the landfill directive. As I mentioned earlier, there are concerns that member states are resorting to waste incineration in order to avoid the 10% target under the directive. I know that we have the question and answer coming up, and there are an increasing number of questions being written, but I'll also ask Mr. Pellegrini one question. How is the Commission addressing this reality, and do you think that the current legislation is effective also in line with the principles and the targets under the circular economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. MEP Engerer. Thank you. I thank you for this political statement. I will now ask MEP Bijou, and I ask all of you to ask questions, and also remember about the hashtag no time to waste, and questions you can pose in the chat or in the question and answer chat box. Mr. Bijou.
Thank you. Dear friends, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank the speaker. As a MEP, I have well received all messages you have sent during this meeting. I share with you that I totally agree with the statements. There is no time to waste. Today's world is complex, and we all know that when things are complicated, it's necessary to return to simplicity and return to obvious. Therefore, it's important to reiterate that the best solution to reduce waste is not to produce waste. Whether you are like me on an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, in Réunion Island, or if you are in Pyrenees in France or in Berlin, it's this requirement to reduce our waste that must be the basis of our actions. This requirement is a daily task, and as you know, I believe in local solutions. Local solutions exist. Local solutions are everywhere, but they are sometimes unknown, and we must bring together good will and share good initiative. Where I live in Réunion Island, I have seen young people using banana leaves or sugarcane to replace plastic packaging. It's absolutely fantastic. I also want to say how important NGOs are. They are really active in cleaning up the beaches and protecting our forest. Today, everyone has to know that everyone has a role to play. This is even more important with the health crisis. You know, there was a before and there will be an after. Our challenges must become opportunities to build together a fairer world and a world with more respect. Respect for others, respect for our planet, respect for our children and future generations. Therefore, we need a more balanced and less resource-consuming future. This new future starts today with the development of the circular economy. A lot of people have spoken about this. We need leadership to accelerate this momentum. And I tell to you, the overseas territories are territories of solutions. Our remoteness and insularity oblige us to succeed in this challenge with the Green Deal, of course, but we need a Blue Deal too. Once again, we must build these solutions with Europe, with our neighbors too. It's really important to work together. We must rely on strength of collective intelligence. I want to send a clear message as a conclusion. This great challenge of waste management requires us to be demanding, but demanding does not prevent optimism, you know, and I even want to say that optimism is one of the key for success. Thank you very much for this invitation and for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bijou, for this really very mobilizing speech, and very inspiring for me, encouraging as well. Mobilization of all stakeholders and NGOs that work on behalf of the civil society. And actually also the fact that you come from French region, but in the outer sea region, so far away from Europe, I think there is a lot of things we can learn from the global experiences, and that's really encouraging to hear. And so thank you to both MEPs, Mr. Bijou from Renew Europe and Mr. Engerer from S&D Group. We hope to work in future with you on this. There is just 10 minutes left. We have a few questions. I just want to check if Mr. Pellegrini from the Commission is still with us, because there are some. But I can start with first, which is addressed to all panelists, possibly, but maybe mostly for Mr. Pellegrini. So it is.
I'm still, Piotr. I said, okay. I mean, I was asked to join meeting with the Cabinet and the Commission, but for a few minutes, I can still be here.
Okay, thank you. So there is a question from Jack McKibben from Zero Waste Europe about residual waste generation cap. It is a goal for the CAP, halving residual waste generation. And how the question would be, sorry for that. Okay, I ask everybody to pose clear questions. So we believe that the residual waste generation cap passed by the EU proved to be effective. Do you think it proves to be effective tool to force higher recycling and reuse from member states? Maybe can you say a few words about this cap on residual waste generation?
So let me also make a clarification because you referred to what I said about waste to energy. My point, Piotr, was very simple. It was indeed that waste to energy is certainly better than landfilling. So that was the only point I was making. And actually, I was making the opposite point, that we expect in the recovery and resilience plans, member states to, rather than shifting, as some of you were saying, from landfilling to waste to energy, we expect them to really shift from landfilling to recycling and to build the recycling and collection and separate collection capacity. So that's I just wanted to clarify the point I've made. But as such, as you know, waste to energy is one of the options to recover waste. There has been even a communication by the Commission. But clearly, one thing is to say that is certainly better than landfilling. Another thing is to say that it should be funded under the recovery and resilience funds. So in the recovery and resilience funds, we expect really the focus to be on circularity and therefore on recycling and reuse as technology. On the residual waste target, as you know, there is a study on waste prevention, which is ongoing, in view of possibly setting waste prevention targets in the Waste Framework Directive revision. And indeed, this could be one of the options. There are various options on the table. It could be a target on the residual waste per person per kilogram, but it can also be an overall target on waste prevention per member states, and then each of the member states has to take measures to comply with that target. So all these options are currently assessed in this contract which we have.
Okay, thank you very much. This is typical that most questions are to you. There is one more from colleagues from Reuse, Matthew. Which indicators will be used to identify if member states are truly implementing the waste hierarchy? Will the transposition of Waste Framework Directive be enough to ensure that recycling is not prioritized over reuse and prevention? Or do you think that we will have to wait for the implementation of the Circular Economy Action Plan? So it's, whether we focus and member states focus most on prevention, and where is reuse and prevention really here? Do we need maybe more focus on this? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
We are aware that for certain, let's say, pieces of legislation, I'll give you an example, the waste shipment legislation as such, the waste shipment regulation, they are not fully in line with the waste hierarchy. So what we are trying to do is also, when revising the other legislation, I'll give you the example of waste shipment regulation, is to phase in the respect of the waste hierarchy. So even the rules which will regulate the waste shipment should facilitate reuse and recycling compared to the other type of disposal. So we are aware that, for example, at the moment, there is no such a distinction in the waste shipment regulation. So this is an example I wanted to give you because it's something which we are working on it right now. I will have to leave you now because I see that my director general is there in the video. But I will remain on, and then I will, if the point finished, because it's our regular meeting with the Commission, which has started half an hour before. But if I manage to join, I will just deactivate the video, but I will be there, Piotr, and I can take an additional question when I'm back, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Even if in your busy agenda, you could be with us. There are indeed a few questions. It's a bit to you, but maybe other panelists also know. It is a question regarding the fines, penalties to member states if they fail to meet the objectives of the directives. Maybe there are some experts here also on this front who would tell us whether member states and maybe regions should fear to be given penalties for this, for not reaching the objectives, as it is the case of infringement for many other policies, nature or others. If any from the panelists knows anything about the penalties of not reaching the targets, whether political penalties or financial or whatever can be there. I mean, political, maybe not, but okay, maybe not this question is really.
We are not an expert on that from Ecopreneur's side, but like I said during my presentation, the absence now of kind of stick seems very important, because when the cohesion funds, the access to the cohesion funds was coupled to the implementation of directives, that worked very well. And therefore, my estimate is if you make a link to the funding from the recovery funds or the cohesion funds again, then or both, then this would help with the implementation psychologically. So that is a positive incentive, but with a stick.
Yeah, that is a clear point. The conditionality, right? Not having access to the big grants, big money is also a penalty. Maybe MEPs, if you are still with us, you know how the parliament would deal with countries that are not really reaching targets, and how you would see this political action or penalties, if you can. Otherwise, we can. But thank you, Arthur. Maybe from yes.
I can try, Franz, here. Okay. You know, as you said, it will be very important in the future, the access to the money. This, as we heard, is the first penalty. Otherwise, there are this procedure in which Commission must start these pilots, and at the end, there are fines and everything. It's a regular way, but at that moment, for these cases, which transposition was necessary to do in July last year, I don't know that any country get any pilot on this topic.
Indeed, it might be quite early. And indeed, that's what also MEP and Gerard said, that the Commission should start legal actions, and then later the penalties will follow. Yeah, thank you. Okay, no, that question was there. Okay, a question again about packaging. Does the Commission think that it would be desirable to move packaging waste rules from directive to a regulation? So thinking about single market, like we have a regulation for batteries now. Could it be also the approach for packaging? An interesting question. If a colleague from Nestle said that they need a harmonized situation, harmonized regulation, so why not to have a regulation rather than just a directive for packaging? If so, how this could be done, especially with the view of difference between organization of waste systems in member states? If the Commission cannot answer, which I understand, maybe other colleagues that focus on packaging. Does anybody wants to take the floor, or our colleagues from NGOs that work at the national level, how they see? If not, then I just can read the remark that is also relevant to this from our colleague Carmen from Portugal, that we need to prevent reuse. I would like to see harmonization myself, from me, harmonization on prevention and harmonization on reuse, and really a strong action on this, rather than only harmonization for example, separate collection of waste. This is one of the goals of the Commission, to have harmonization for separate collection, but is it really the main goal? Let's go for harmonization and high ambition for prevent and reuse if we want to recycle instead of landfilling our waste. How can we use the quarries like a solution to waste, like a green solution? I don't think it's about backfilling of waste into queries, but okay. Carmen?
Sorry, I can
clarify.
Present my doubt. We think we need to focus on prevention and reuse. It will be the future of waste. It's not only the recycling, the solution of waste. It's what is said in this webinar. The solutions are to reduce and to prevent. But if we want to go that way, how can it possible? And if you want to substitute the landfill for recycling in some kinds of waste, how can it possible that we can use the quarries to put the waste that it can be recycling or reuse, or even use like a material, not like waste? It's our doubt. How can it possible that the quarries can be a green solution for waste, and it can be calculated to the goals, to the goals that we need to achieve, like a green solution for this kind of waste, like construction and demolition waste? It's what I think it's strange.
Thank you, Carmen, for clarification. So clearly it's a complaint that yeah, there are some greenwashing, some activities that are considered green. And thank you for actually concluding. What I wanted to say is prevention and reuse, that is the main goal. And then now I will just hand over to organizers and to MEP Mr. Bogovič to conclude a few remarks. And then thank you to everyone. Thank you to organizers as well, to Regina and Ilias. Over to you. Maybe first to Mr. MEP Bogovič to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Piotr. First to you, to great work you did, and for organizing of this event. I think it was very interesting event. It was very important that we had all stakeholders we need. That and like Johannes Weber from Food and Drink and Nestlé said, three pillars. We have three pillars: design, infrastructure, consumer. And who is behind? All stakeholders are behind these three pillars. So it's very important that business entrepreneur sector is involved. It's to design products and to develop and to prepare products which are more reusable, more recyclable. On another side, it's necessary that we have infrastructure, and here we come from local, regional, state level to national level to European level. Here we heard a lot about the role of cohesion policy, the role of resilient and recovery fund, and these conditions which will be connected with the use of this money. And what is always the most important, awareness, raise the awareness of people, of consumer, that we will manage with wastes on the appropriate way. So I think thanks again for organizing. Thanks to Ilias and Regine from European Bureau for Conservation and Development, and also in the name of the Secretariat of our intergroup. And it was a big pleasure to be host of this event. I wish you a nice afternoon.